Those Teslas are red hot, Rolls-Royce launches on the cheap, and Corvette puts the Sting back in Stingray.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone. Your journey, our passion.
This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy, episode 218 for November 8th of 2013. Corvette C7, a technical tour de force. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time or 2300 GMT. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or by following the links on our website. Before we get going here, I want everybody to know that we're going to be webcasting live from the LA Auto Show, brought to you by our signature sponsor, Hyundai. That's coming up on Wednesday, November 20th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. We're going to have a great lineup of guests, including Mark Royce from General Motors, Harold Wessler, the CEO of Maserati, Detlev von Platten, who runs Porsche North America. And you can check out the full list of all the guests we're going to have at our website, Autoline.tv. Again, that's 4 p.m. Eastern Time, Wednesday, November 20th. And we really want to thank Hyundai for being our signature sponsor. Mr. D.
Hey, John. How are you?
I'm doing good. Doing good. We got lots of stuff to talk about, and we got Gary Vasilash with us to talk about it, too.
Yeah. John, how are you?
Gary.
Peter, good to see you both.
Good seeing the both of you guys.
Crisp fall evening?
Yes.
A crisp fall evening. Maybe not as crisp as some of those Teslas, though. What do you got? Here yet another fire.
Well, you know, one, you can sort of say, oh, it was a freak episode. Two, it's up to the Tesla PR machine and the great Elon to just say it's no big deal. Three, they got a problem. This is a serious problem, and they better fix it or, well, let's back up. The stock was overvalued to begin with, and that took a beating. This is just, now there is something wrong with Teslas, and they either fix it or they're going to watch their fortunes plummet.
Well, as you said on the show and had on your website, you think that the problem is they don't protect the battery enough.
Yeah, I had inside information from someone who knows that GM wraps their batteries 3 times on the Volt.
And when you say wrap it, you mean like 3 layers of protection?
3 layers
like steel, is it?
Whatever they choose to use. I mean, I don't know the exact formula that GM uses, but from what I understand, the Tesla engineers decided to do one protective layer instead of 3. And all these fires are the result of penetration of the battery compartment.
Yeah.
It's like a giant bowl of not good, folks.
Well, the other thing was interesting. We saw Tesla's earnings earlier this week, and I don't know why they do this. You know, there's GAAP accounting procedures, generally accepted accounting procedures. That's what they call GAAP. And then there's non-GAAP. And Tesla's been using these non-GAAP numbers, which make their numbers look good. And then when they turn around and use GAAP accounting procedures, which pretty much everybody else in the world uses, they go from making a profit to posting a loss. And that hurt the stock. That really hurt it. Now, this third fire that we just heard about today has hurt it even more.
You can't cover that up. I mean, that's a big deal. And I know it's disheartening in the touchy-feely enclaves when anyone, you know, criticizes the sacred Tesla. But let's get real, folks. This is, you know, it's a serious thing now. You know, this isn't play school with your touchy-feely cars and, gee, look at me, I'm cool, I'm driving a Tesla, and I'm so righteous for the environment. You know, when it's blowing up real good, something's wrong, and it needs to be addressed. And all the smoke and mirrors that Elon can muster cannot hide the fact that there's something wrong with it.
Wasn't he talking earlier this week about building a massive battery factory that would be making like
the raw materials? Yeah, the raw materials come in and batteries come out like, you know, the original Rouge plant.
Yeah, apparently Tesla's even facing a shortage of batteries They just signed an agreement, which was announced, in the last week, right? That Panasonic's going to build them, a whole bunch of battery cells. But you're right. He said he would like to take that in-house, which I think is pretty cool.
I think they are doing some in-house. I mean, it's their architecture. That was their approach to batteries is different than the Volt or different than anybody else is using, except for what Toyota's using them in the RAV4 EV, and, where basically you have
Mercedes is using them too.
A series of computer batteries that are
the so-called laptop.
Linked together. Yeah, but if you remember, what was it? Not that many years ago when there were all these warnings about laptops lighting on fire, and people everywhere were getting conflagrations of, and so there is something about that chemistry that perhaps needs to be more closely worked
Well,
out.
they're charging enough for them. Why aren't they seriously wrapped? I mean,
I think that they say that they have an armor plating on the body underside. And
how's that working?
It's apparently not very well.
Now, I mean, these 3 fires have been with 3 fairly severe impacts. The one today that we heard about, supposedly the guy hit a trailer hitch. That's a nice big chunk of metal. That's going to do some damage. But, this is, like you say, Peter, when you got 3 fires in a matter of weeks, you got at the very least, you got a public relations disaster on your hands.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's face it. If this was Chevrolet or Ford, I mean, the pitchforks would be coming out.
Right.
We have to stop these hacks from Detroit from releasing these bad vehicles on the country. That's the tone it would be. But Tesla's like, it's a bit of a spot of bad luck. No, not really.
Well, I haven't heard...
Well, General Motors got excoriated, I think, fairly badly for the
NHTSA test.
The Volt. Remember, there was a problem with the Volt. Yeah. I mean, it's just like so. They, it's just like, man, they were hammered.
There's still a prevailing. Don't kid yourself. There's still a prevailing attitude in this country that Toyota and any other import equals good, and Detroit equals bad. It's still out there. It's still prevalent, and it's still in a lot of places. It's going to take a long time to change that, and
it's not as bad as it was, though.
Not as bad.
It's changed a lot. It's changed a lot.
And
the only reason it's changed?
Good
product.
Right.
Good product.
Detroit guys have earned it.
Yeah. CTS, Motor Trend Car of the Year. The Corvette.
Yeah. What do you make of that? CTS Car of the Year. I thought they would have gone with the Corvette.
Well, I think the CTS is,
it's a good car. There's no question.
Every time anyone drives it, they say, wow.
Were you surprised that, Gary, that Motor Trend went with it?
A little bit, because I would agree with you that I would have thought that it would have been the Corvette. I would have thought that would have been a winner, hands down, because we see CTSs changed more frequently. This is the 7th generation of a Corvette in how many years?
Yeah, in 60 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like...
And we're already on the 3rd CTS in less than a decade.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like, wow, this is and it's just, that's why I was a little surprised.
It's the 3rd CTS. It's the first CTS that merits serious consideration if you own a BMW.
But didn't they win before with the CTS?
Well, now, let me say, the CTS V Series is one of my favorite cars. This CTS, the new one, is probably more impressive than the V Series because as a total car, it is just, it's a stunning job.
Well, they changed it so much. The first 2 generations, if you will, really were aimed at the 3 Series. This one's aimed at the 5.
Right.
So the price has gone up commensurate with that.
Well, because they have the ATS for.
The problem was the first 2 might have been aimed at the 3, but it was bigger than the 3. It was between the 3 and the 5. So then they brought the ATS out, which is a legitimate 3 competitor. The problem for Cadillac dealers was they had the ATS and the old CTS, the 2nd generation, on the dealer lots at the same time, and so the CTS just took in the chin. Transaction prices plummeted. They had to put money on the hood to get rid of them. Now they finally got the ATS against the 3, CTS against the 5, and the XTS kind of sort of against the 7. I like the XTS by itself. It's no 7 competitor by any stretch.
No, not by any stretch. I saw my first hearse version of the XTS a week ago.
Hearse?
A hearse, yeah.
Wow.
I know. It's the most modern looking hearse you've ever seen.
I bet it would be.
But, you know, getting back to this thing about the American products, I mean, it's all about the product. And the true believers at GM have delivered the products now, in spite of their woebegone lost leader. The true believers are delivering the products. So that only that will change people's attitudes about Detroit.
You know, Mark Royce had some of us jurors from the North American Car of the Year in just to talk with him about whatever. And, you know, that's what I like about him. It was not a hard sell job at all. In fact, it was no sell job at all of trying to convince us to vote for the Vet or the CTS or the Impala as Car of the Year. But we asked him, so what else is missing in the lineup? And he was amazingly forthcoming. He wants a new HHR.
Yeah, he wants something like that.
Panel truck, not a passenger.
Because he's worried about, you know,
Transit Connect at Ford.
The Freshen Transit Connect's pretty good.
But aren't they getting the Nissan NV? I thought that they.
Yeah, but he said he said, look, that's a stopgap measure. Yeah, that's just a. But you're right, Gary. They are going to get that. But he said no. He wants their own architect.
Well, do they have anything in Europe that, I mean, the other guys, I mean, because you think about it, the Transit Connect and the Transit,
right,
both European vehicles, been there for a long time. The Fiat Ducato, which, you know, Chrysler is bringing over now, or making it a Ram. Was it ProMaster, I think they're calling it?
That's
again,
right.
You know, European product. So doesn't Opel or
Opel has a couple of vans. Exactly. So, and I want to say one of them, don't they share with PSA? I think there's a program at.
Well, that wasn't the People Mover, the Zafira or whatever.
Yeah. No, that was a minivan.
That's like a minivan,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
But that Nissan, that GM's, the stopgap, it's so freaking ugly.
It's hideous.
It's
hideous. I know.
You know.
Well, I don't think any of those cars are going to win any beauty contests. I mean, come on.
I know, but that NV200 just doesn't look good.
The Freshen Transit Connect at least makes a flyer at it.
Yeah.
I mean, they at least tried it. They at least worked through lunch on it. I mean, the Nissan looks like, you know, about 8 to 8:45. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Let's move on to something else.
To paraphrase a great line that somebody once told me, why didn't they just give the money to the poor? Gary, you drove, you were on a Rolls-Royce Wraith, Longley, that I turned the trip down. I just said, that is the stupidest trip I've ever heard of in my life.
So you don't want to fly to Phoenix and back in one day?
In one day. It was like...
I keep hearing about this, and it's just like maybe the worst media trip I've ever heard of.
I mean, it was beyond stupidity because, you know, to get from Detroit to Phoenix is, what, almost 4 hours.
Oh, it was more than 4
Go to the airport, sit in the airport, blah, blah, blah. You're talking 5-6 hours each way. And it was like, fly to Phoenix, drive the car a little bit, and head home again. And it was like, this is stupid.
Well, it was what was, so... Just like let's put all of that aside. I mean, and it was
no, let's not. Let's talk about it.
But I mean, but this was basically a more disturbing part of that. And so people who don't know what it is that happens when we go on these programs, so basically there's a car and you get a partner and they give you a series of instructions and you driving instructions, where to turn, and there's a route and it's all mapped out and it's all laid out, and so you have to follow those instructions fairly carefully, and then you get to a point and then you change drivers and then the other driver drives and the other person navigates. And some car companies have become more clever, and what they're doing is they're using the navigation system rather than having a guy with a route book, yet it's always a handy thing to have the physical route book with you. So we set out in the Wraith, which is an amazing car. I mean, it's...
the headliner's just awesome.
It's the headliner that Peter's talking about is a leather headliner. And what they do, it's a leather, come on, it says Rolls-Royce. It has the biggest piece of formed wood on the door panels in existence, I mean, literally. The headliner, the leather headliner, that it's perforated, and in the perforations, they hand place fiber optic cables, okay, to create constellations. And so people who buy into the bespoke Rolls-Royce program can actually say,
there it is.
Say, I want the headliner to look like the
Crab Nebula.
Or the night did the day I was born. And what they do is they literally go find an astronomer who tells them what the stars look like, and then someone has to sit there with...
That's what they told you. I'll bet they all look the same, and nobody knows the difference.
Somebody busts out their Google star thing and holds it up. But anyway, so the thing was that, okay, one of the features of the Rolls-Royce is apparently this is the first application of a GPS system that is connected with the transmission control unit. So what it does is it knows where you're at, and it looks at the road ahead, and it makes a determination of what gear you ought to be in, okay? So it's taking the terrain into account based on GPS, okay? And as we know, navigation is generally based on GPS. They have the navigation set up in the car for us to drive as we take this route. And, well, lo and behold, the navigation system just didn't work. I mean, it was now announcing to us in a very pleasant British female voice for us to turn around randomly or to make turns where there is no place to make a turn because we're on a 2-lane highway in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, and things like that. So that gives you a lot of confidence. And
how long were you in the vehicle? 2 hours?
No, it was a 200-mile route that we drove. So it was 100 miles for me and then 100 miles for my my colleague.
So it's a 20-hour drive or 20-hour day.
Yeah, pretty much. But the problem was that the physical instructions that they gave us. So we're getting near the end of the route, and now the only thing that they did have a planned time was when I was supposed to leave for the airport. Sort of important, since that was like the only flight that was going to be going back.
To get back at 2 o'clock in the morning. Right?
So we get to this place where we're supposed to make a turn, and it says, turn left on Country Club Drive. And so we followed the instructions and turned left on Country Club Drive. Now, the navigation system wasn't even going to have us take the designated route. You could see the line on the navigation system that we had to go off to the right, and it says, stay to the left. Get off to the right, but stay to the left, okay, showing the other lanes. So we're in rush hour traffic, and we come to the realization that we were going in the absolute wrong direction. So, I mean, I got back, got out of the car, and got into the thing and went to the airport. All that said, the car is just magnificent.
Well, of course, they've spared no expense except when it comes to inviting the media to come sample the car.
But the thing that sort of got me was that, when a car costs in excess of $350,000, can you tell? I mean, it sort of reminds me of an audio system. It seems to me that you can buy a very, very expensive audio system, and at some point my ears will not hear the difference between, this good and this good. I mean, it's just going to be impossible. And so I was thinking, can I really tell the difference between that car and driving the S-Class, say? I don't know that I can.
It's all about exclusivity. And you're absolutely right. You hit a point where a car cannot be better, but there can be fewer of them.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you go with, excuse me, that route where you want to have exclusivity, you just charge more for the car. Mm-hmm. And that's where the price comes in. And it's got nothing to do with the headliner or the biggest piece of wood on a door panel that exists in the world or whatever it is that they're talking about. It's just, it costs X amount of dollars to develop a car, and you divide it by the number of units that you're going to build, and that tells you the price.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was quite a car.
I liked the way Porsche did it for the 911. It was, I don't know how far away from Santa Barbara, but they just said, well, there's a car, the navigation, you can either program it to run the freeway back, or you can program it to run the mountain passes back. So I just did that by myself in the car. It's awesome.
That's the way to do it.
This is sort of a somewhat funny story related to the technology in the vehicle, that my co-driver wanted to see how it would accelerate from a light. So he drove very spiritedly away from the signal, and so then he began to slow down. And as he was slowing down from this remarkable speed that he had achieved, that there happened to be a police officer who had his radar working in the median that you couldn't see him from where we were at. So we get pulled over. And the police officer said, after we explained what the situation was, actually I sat there mute because I figured I was the passenger and I didn't want to. Of course, we were both thinking, gee, how's this going to look? Georgia plates, Rolls-Royce, Michigan driver's license, you know. It's anyway, so the officer said, you know, I think a car that's that expensive probably has cruise control. Why don't you use it? And, it's a good point. Good driving tip when you're driving on freeways. Put your cruise control on, and therefore you will not be able to exceed the speed limit.
We had a flying spur for half a day, 2 days. Nice car. At 612 horsepower. I mean, the thing is so massive in weight, yet when you stand on that motor, that thing just flies. It's an amazing physics thing going on there. Loved it.
That's a lot of mass. Yeah, what do those cars weigh? 5,000 pounds?
In excess of 5,000.
No, it's like 5,400 or 5,500. It's just awesome.
It's big,
Yeah.
big.
Yeah, the Rolls was 624 horsepower, V12. And, very, very nice. But speaking of horsepower, I saw today that what was it, 3 weeks ago or so, when the Fiesta ST was in here, that Ford announced that the ST sub-brand, or however you describe it, is bringing in an unexpected number of people to their showrooms.
Yeah, and the Focus.
And they're really surprised at how well that's doing. And,
with a
just
median
because of
income
the-
of $127,000 and
For the Focus or the Fiesta?
Focus.
Because they don't have enough numbers to show anything on the Fiesta yet, because the numbers,
it's too new.
Yeah, it's too new that are out there.
Right.
And so they're selling, I checked with them today to see, and they're selling a little under 1,000 a month of the ST Focus. Now, in the grand scheme of Focus, that isn't that many, but I mean, I think it's very helpful for them to be able to get traction in places like Los Angeles. And
And especially bringing in that kind of income level, people buying a Focus with that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Hey, speaking of Ford, what did you guys make of Jay Mays announcing his retirement, or Ford announcing his retirement?
I'm not surprised. I think that he's pretty well done what needs to be done, and so he'll have left, and the Mustang will come out, and the new F-150 will have come out, and he knows his contribution to those vehicles, and he doesn't need to necessarily be there for that. And I've talked to him, and he's just seemed as though that this was something that was inevitable in his career. I mean, it's not like the guy hasn't been working for a long time, so I don't think it was anything but him deciding, time to move on. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, basically that, and also I think it's preparing for the transition when Alan leaves and Mark Fields takes over.
But I had lunch with, Ford invited a couple of other, Scott Burgess and Michelle Krebs and I, and we had lunch with the global design heads at the Product Development Center, and so from all over the world they come in quarterly or go somewhere else quarterly, and I mean the camaraderie among that group and the way these guys just clicked, I mean it was extraordinary. I mean, and so you didn't get the sense that there was dead man walking. I mean, it was none of that. It was just I think it was a surprise to people. And
well, the results are there. Ford's got the best looking lineup I think it's ever had in the history of the company.
Yeah,
sure, and,
definitely.
Hey, why don't we take a break right now? Why don't we get our guest Tadge Juechter from Chief Engineer for Corvette in here? So, Ben, let's give a A shout out to our friends at Bridgestone and Firestone.
Introducing a car company that's never made a single car. We took the power of a 9-year-old V8 and gave it the impressive handling of Firestone's Destination tire. Now, moms agree. Every milk run feels like a victory lap. So whatever you drive a Firestone.
Autoline offers you one of the most effective ways to get your marketing message in front of the decision makers in the global automotive industry. Contact Stacy Eman today.
So, Tadge Juechter, the chief engineer, welcome to Autoline After Hours.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
Welcome.
And it's awesome. You brought a screaming yellow Zonker Stingray along with you here, too.
It's actually my favorite color. I bought 2006 Z06, and I bought it in yellow, and that's our race car colors. And so, having the car in yellow and black with the yellow calipers, I think, spectacular.
It really pops. I saw one of these cars earlier this summer parked out on the street from about 3 or 4 blocks away, and I mean, it just jumps out at you in this color.
Yeah, and it's pretty obvious in almost any color. We're starting to get customer letters now because we're starting to get, we've built over 6,000 Stingray so far, so a lot of customers have them in their hands. So the letters are starting to come in with people experiencing what we in GM and journalists have experienced. You drive this car around, it's like being in a spaceship. People follow you around, they're taking your pictures. You're a rock star.
To me, it shows that if you come out with something that's really cool in this car, the public will love it. Public who may otherwise not be really interested in a car at all absolutely comes alive when they see this.
Yeah, even if they don't know it's a Corvette, they just know what is that. They've not seen anything like it before. And that's really one of the huge challenges, is make a car that looks different, but don't make it look different and goofy, make it look different and good. And then we had the additional challenge when you have a car that goes as fast as a light aircraft, it also has to work aerodynamically. So it has to look different, has to look good, and also have to be very functional. Putting those three together is a huge challenge for the design team.
So how long was this being developed? I mean, when did you start?
We started in earnest shortly after the bankruptcy. We had had some kind of early starts that had gotten stopped and wound down, but we really started, we got the go signal actually. You know what, it actually might have to do with Autoline, because I think Fritz Henderson was on talking right after the bankruptcy, and a question came in about a new Corvette. And he answered incorrectly that, yes, we have one under development. It's going to be an evolutionary major change from the car, the C6, sixth generation car that they knew. And just by coincidence, since I don't see Fritz every day, he had a buddy who had a question about the Corvette, and so it happened that he sent a note down wanting to answer the question. And I took the opportunity to say, oh, by the way, I saw you, and it's not true that we're working on a new car right now. We've stood down after the bankruptcy. Well, it's only about a week later we got the call from the master planners in the organization. Well, get it in gear, get going on that thing, you know. So it was a really nice kickstart.
Well, that's awesome. Autoline may have played a role, however small, in what's in the studio right now.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant.
I think you deserve full credit, actually.
So you're going to give him that car? Does John get that for...
It's not mine, but if it was up to me, I would give it to you.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of giving away stuff, we should let everybody know right now. We're going to have a contest. We've got a number of things here. We've got a Corvette duffel bag.
Which I use. I have one of those, and I use that in my daily travels.
We've got a Corvette notebook, very nice, leather bound with a bright red strap around it. We've got a Corvette T-shirt that would look cool on anybody. And we've got, and let's bring that up, we've got a poster here that we're going to give away of the 2014 Stingray. And we're going to draw a name at random. So if you are a subscriber to Autoline, you're automatically entered. If you're not a subscriber, I would recommend that you go to the Autoline website and subscribe to our daily email, and we're going to pick a name at random probably in about a week's time or so. So, if you're hearing this on the podcast, you're not out of the running by any means. If you're already subscribing, you're in the running. If not, just do all that, and you'll be in on winning some pretty cool stuff. And then we'll work on Tadge on throwing a Corvette in to make it really worth your while.
You can try.
I'm sure he's heard that once or twice.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it.
Test drivers, we get with the cars that we're driving around, our captured test fleet, I get lots of offers that when you're done with that, can you just slide it to me at a discount price? I'd love to have it.
But the development was not just an enhancement of the C6. This is all new, right?
Absolutely, and the rest of the story, of course, is we started out as an evolutionary major, and part of the way through, we realized that just wasn't going to work. The original concept was we're going to take the aluminum frame that we had in production out of the Z06, the R1. That frame was optimized for a fixed roof car, so we knew we wanted to do the removable roof, the target top, as some people call it. And so we thought we could kind of take that basic design and kind of patch our way into a structure that was stiff enough that would work, so leverage what we had before. Partway down the development path, we realized we weren't going to Band-Aid our way into a good solution, and we basically had to wipe the slate clean, say, okay, we're going to do an aluminum structure. It's going to be very stiff, very light. We want to take advantage of the latest and greatest technology, just not be beholden to any past manufacturing practices or any hard points or anything like that. So we just basically started from a blank sheet of paper and said, what's the best? What's the best way to fabricate aluminum parts, to join them together? What's dimensionally the most precise? How stiff can we make this thing? How light can we make this thing? And when you drive the car, you can really feel the results of that.
Yes, you can. So what's the difference now between the pre-bankruptcy GM and the post-bankruptcy GM as somebody working on a Corvette? What's the difference that you see?
Well, you can see it not just in the Corvette, but in the other cars General Motors is producing. It's pretty obvious that it's all about the product. I think the leadership team we have in place now understands that you're not going anywhere without great cars in every segment in which we compete. So I think there's a renewed focus on that. I know on our own team, we've always stayed very close to our customers. We know what our customers want, but having the freedom, I guess, to make sure that we execute in every area of the business, not be tied down to some maybe artificial financial constraints that seem like they make sense in a conference room, but in the real world, when you're talking about selling cars to customers, you could save pennies over here, you're losing buckets of money over there.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I mean, that's what I always said in the pre-bankruptcy GM, that it was penny wise but pound foolish.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that, we had a different set of priorities there. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth,
right. But it's clear that it's a very different company coming out of bankruptcy. And to your point, just look at the product. It's the best product the company's ever come out with.
Yeah, we're
certainly
very proud of it.
In a long, long time.
Yeah, and we want to keep it rolling. I mean, this is, we try to build on everything we've done before. And, you're seeing the start of a product onslaught, and I think we're just going to keep learning to do product development better and better and better as a company.
Is Corvette a learning lab for the rest of the organization? I mean, the way you guys do things in terms of execution as well as technology?
Yeah, there's actually a poster you can get that stretches back 60 years of Corvette innovations, and then you see, first use of ABS and traction control and all the stuff we take for granted now. But there are a huge number of things where Corvette stood in as the technology flagship, being either the very first in the industry or certainly the first in General Motors to apply a new technology. You kind of have a bunch of car-crazy guys figuring out how to execute it, make it work really well on the Corvette. And then in a lot of ways, that makes it easier to do more standard vehicles.
So could we possibly see more composite panels on cars that aren't Corvettes from General Motors?
Yes. I mean, we've been in composites for our entire life. Corvette's been a composite-intensive vehicle since 1953. The whole rest of the world's kind of catching up. It's still going to take a while before you see many cars mainstream as composites. But if you look at carbon fiber, originally kind of race car, aerospace material, high-end bicycles, and we started putting carbon fiber on the road as kind of the ultimate engineering solution a decade ago. It was only on the most special, most premium Corvettes, and over time it's gotten to more body panels, higher volumes, and this is the first time we've been able to make it standard. So the hood and the roof, absolutely, the standard equipment now. For $50,000, you get a car with carbon fiber Class A body panels, which is a real statement to the trajectory that the material's on. So once you can afford it on a $50,000 car, then you're going to start to see it catch on elsewhere. Yeah,
we've done some shows on carbon fiber, and the people involved in that end of the business are doing a lot to bring the costs down.
Absolutely, and that's the whole thing, right? I mean, carbon fiber has been the holy grail of materials for a long time. There's nothing beyond that. It's no matter how much money you're willing to spend, whether it's Formula One or wherever, it's carbon. And so the key is, how do you take that material, bend it, and get it to the application that you want at a cost you can afford?
You were mentioning the frame rails for the C6. And so I seem to recall that when you guys had those frame rails, they were hydroformed frame rails, and at that time it was like, whoa, this is completely revolutionary. So it was like you guys had some very high tech, but you've gone beyond that with this by having a multi-aluminum structure?
Right. It's more complicated. We still use hydroform, but we use it in a more tailored way. So on the 5th generation Corvette, we pioneered the largest automotive use of hydroform that had ever been done, and probably done to this day. And we basically put a whole bunch of pieces that were welded together, steel pieces, put that all into one bumper-to-bumper rail, which is great for dimensional stability, great for stiffness. You don't have all those joints, all that welding. So that's what's great about hydroforming. What's not great about it is the material properties that it's made out of are the same everywhere, all along. Also, the thickness of it is the same everywhere, all along. So you can't tailor the material properties. Yes, you get the advantages of fewer joints. Yes, you get the advantages of having that one long piece, but you get a disadvantage of not being able to use very high-strength material in the crush zones in the front and the rear. You can't tailor the gauges all the way around and through the body sections. What we've done is we take and use the hydroform like in the center of the car, where the gauges want to be constant and the material properties want to be constant, but then we used other techniques like hollow castings and 7000 series extruded aluminum to tailor the gauge right where it needed to be. So on the old aluminum rail, it was about 4 millimeters thick end to end. Now we vary from less than 2 millimeters thick in places to over an inch thick.
Wow.
You can imagine an inch thick in places where you attach control arms for suspension. You want super rigidity right there. So you can imagine that variation as you cut sections all the way along the rail.
I love the look of the chassis. I mean, I'd hang it on a wall. That's how good it looks.
Well, people have asked me, what's your favorite Corvette? That's my favorite Corvette. When I retire, what I want to do is, as pretty as this is, I want that go-kart, that rolling chassis, has the powertrain chassis and the body structure. The power to weight ratio, that would be impressive.
The aero might not be so hot, but
you can't speed that fast anywhere out here. So, but it would be just a ride. I was a go-karter when I was a kid, so when I look at that thing, I was like, man, that's an adult go-kart right there.
So what was the biggest challenge on getting this car done? Figuring out that chassis, or what?
Everywhere you look on the car, there's challenges. Everything from the powertrain, integrating cylinder deactivation in the car was a huge challenge. It's a great win, so we got this car that has higher performance and much better fuel economy. The carbon fiber, to be honest, doing the carbon fiber and getting it to the price point here is a huge challenge. But it doesn't matter where you look. The Michelin tires, even though they look like off-the-shelf tire rack Michelin tires, they're not. There's an amazing amount of engineering that went into those, taking a bunch of race technology, and put them into a new paradigm for street tires. Really, the technical detail all around this car is mind-boggling. When people ask me what accomplishment are you most proud of, it's that the bandwidth of the car has gotten bigger. The Corvettes have done well over the years because they do a lot of things well. They're a good daily driver. They're a good long-distance tour. You got good room inside the car. They're comfortable, lots of luggage room. And then they're also a good track weapon. Some people just take them straight to the track and run them hard. It's really hard when you're doing a new car to make all those things about the car better. So it's using the technology to do that, to make everything about the car better. So better performance and better fuel economy, better seat comfort and more lateral support on the track. You know, all these places where the requirements tend to fight each other, how do you break that down and give the best of all worlds?
So how do you do it without compromising? I mean, there's some cars that are, you know, ostensibly daily drivers that, you know, you would have to have a trust after you wore them or drove it for a little while. I mean, they're just so horrible on your insides, and but you guys seem to have cracked that code.
And that's why I say that's our proudest accomplishment, because that's a trick. Even though it's kind of a subtle thing, you're not pointing at one specific technology. It's integration of all the technologies and picking the right ones, because we get technology from the auto industry and outside the auto industry, and then we try to bring that in to try to break that gridlock of having it just, well, I'm just going to trade this for that. You know, okay, I want the car faster on the track, but I don't want to use super stiff spring rates and make the car ride like a race car. I want it to be comfortable when you're driving on Michigan roads.
See, and that's what sold me on this car almost more than anything else. I knew it was going to be a great performing car, but the ride in this thing is unlike any Corvette and unlike most performance cars of this capability. It rides really smooth.
Yeah, and whether you get for the first time, our standard car, what we call FE1, so you don't check any option boxes, that's a 1G car. That used to be an aspirational level, and you ride in that car and it's creamy smooth and it envelops the bumps. And then if you get Z51, as this car is, you get all the track hardware, but you also can control the ride, and if you get the magnetic selective ride, you can have that car be extremely comfortable or be tied down, absolutely locked down on the track.
Corvette, of course, has got near mythic, perception in the U.S. I got to believe this car is going to do more for Corvette outside of the U.S. market than any Corvette heretofore.
I think we gain a lot of points overseas with the aluminum construction. I think it's shocking around the world to have carbon fiber on a standard car and the price that we're going to sell this car. You know, you look at the other cars in Europe that have aluminum and composite construction, you're talking €250,000. I mean, it's astoundingly expensive. So, and I think the way the car drives is very contemporary. The steering, very stiff. The body structure being so stiff lets the chassis do its work. It's like you're saying, it's a car with no compromises, and selling in markets where people are very sophisticated and they understand subtle differences. They just don't want a big sledgehammer and high performance. They want that sophisticated driving experience. I think we have a chance to do a lot better.
So what's the difference in the weight between this car and the convertible?
Almost zero. We designed it as a convertible. There's no parts in the body that are different on the convertible, at least structurally. The only thing we do is at the top of what we call a B-pillar. You know, we've got that roof bow over the top. We take that off and put a cap on. Otherwise, the structure is identical. All the option stuff is identical. So if you get Z51 on a convertible, you get a dry sump and you get ELSD and you get all of the racing hardware that goes along with that. So none of that drives any mass into the car. The only thing that makes it slightly heavier is the pump for the power top. For the first time, we have a one-button power top, so everything's operated by power, and I think that adds 6 or 8 kilos. Otherwise, everything.
When's a convertible in market? End
of this year. We've been saying all the way through the end of this year, and so I just got my Capture Test Fleet car that I'm driving here.
It looks good.
We'll drive that through the fall, and then plan to start selling convertibles here, hopefully before the snow flies in Michigan.
Hey, this is probably a good time to get to all the questions that we got coming in from the audience. This is the part of the show we call Rapid Fire, and Ben, let's let that rip. And they're coming in fast and furious here, Tadge. Rum and Coke says, how is the LT engine different enough to justify its own designation? Why not continue the LS series?
Well, we brought a little baggie of parts that were carried over from the LS series. Like the car, everything was all new in that engine, even though the displacement is the same. So the numeric displacement's the same, but all the parts inside it are different. So it's as different as any other small block has been. You got direct injection, which you don't just throw direct injection on a car. You have to redesign the entire combustion system to take advantage of it. Otherwise, it really doesn't get you much. Variable valve timing, and then, of course, the cylinder deactivation. Those systems, plus the control mechanisms to make all that stuff happen inside the engine, made it as different as the whole car is.
Alexander Karabitsa says, I heard a report that GM was considering the idea of offering a hybrid version of the Vette. Is that true?
I think that's based on a Mark Royce comment when he was asked by a journalist, could you ever conceive of that? And he said, yes, I could conceive of that. So, anything is possible, and we have no product announcements at this time.
I can conceive of unicorns. So.
Let's see here. George from Brooklyn says, please talk about the NASA gel lining for the transmission tunnel. What the hell is that about?
He's talking about aerogel, which is one of the kind of niche technologies where we found from another industry. This is actually a material developed by NASA for spacesuits. One of the customer complaints about the 5th and 6th generation car was the heat emanating from the tunnel, and that's because we got the whole driveline and the exhaust running right down that structural backbone. It's a great packaging solution, but it makes the inside of the car warm if you drive it for a long time on a hot day or you're out there on a track. So we were looking for, again, here's to your question, a paradigm-breaking solution, and we tried, I don't want to name other manufacturers' products, fairly premium products that advertised being excellent insulators. They didn't even come close to this aerogel. If you look it up in Wikipedia, you'll see aerogel for a while held the title of the lowest density solid. They call it frozen smoke. And
I know this stuff.
You can see through it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's
right.
an amazing piece of material.
I've heard it referred to as solid smoke as
solid
well.
Smoke, yeah. And that's what it is. Now, you can't just stick solid smoke in the car. It would crumble. It's not robust. But what they do is they take that same chemistry and incorporate it into a matte-like substance that we're able to apply on the sides of the tunnel and the top of the tunnel. And it's amazing. It's like night and day. That is all that heat inside the tunnel.
Cool to hear this, because I saw that stuff, I want to say 20 years ago. Yeah. And everybody went, wow, this is really cool. And that was one of the properties is it was what an insulator. Nothing could get through heat-wise or cool-wise.
It's like a vacuum. It's like bringing a vacuum from outer space.
But to your point, it was very brittle. It was like a foam or something that would break easily. And we all went, what the hell is this good for? But you guys figured it out.
Yeah. There it is.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I remember seeing it at Sandia National Labs, and they said, here, have this piece. There's like this large thing.
Right, and it doesn't weigh anything.
Yeah, it's just like, it was weird.
Hey, we got a bunch of phone calls coming in. Ben, let's get to the first.
Hey guys, this is Auto Freelancer calling from New Jersey. Just have a question about the Corvette. Why has the Corvette never gone mid-engined? Seems like it'd be a really good move to do so. And also, is there any hope of a affordable mid-engine sports car from the Detroit 3 anytime soon? Thanks, guys.
No. But,
you want to answer this one?
Yeah, we've been talking about mid-engine Corvettes for 35 years. It's just not going to happen. Well, not affordable.
Yeah, and we always get this question, and there's a lot of mid-engine fans out there. We study it, to be honest. Every time we do an all-new car, blank sheet of paper, we study it to see. And the bottom line is it a better car overall? We want the Corvette to sell in volume. If you look at most mid-engine cars, they do not. They do not have the kind of utility, and there's some fundamental challenges around a mid-engine architecture that make it less efficient in an open-air architecture. This has the load pathing is fairly unconventional and fairly inefficient. So when you start to look at everything you want this car to do, all the different ways it wants to be good, the mid-engine has some strikes against it. Now, it looks cool. It's got if you want to do absolutely pure performance, you look at the high-end race series, they're all mid-engine, so it has a lot of performance enablers to it. But until that whole package can be a better car than what we're producing now, we won't be going mid-engine.
That's a great answer. JM1NB says, what do you feel about red-only rear light packages? Do you support a requirement for yellow amber turn signals?
Well, we do have amber turns. We use LED lighting all across the back, so even though when they're not lit up, it looks like we got all red lighting. But I think for the first time, at least the first time in a couple of generations, the turn signals are now amber, which makes them more easily perceived as a turn signal and makes it global, makes the lamps global.
So what is the new race car going to be designated? C7R, C7.R, C7.R/ZR1? What are you guys going to call it?
It'll be the C7R, and I think there's a point in there.
There is? What is the point of the point? I just wondered.
I don't know. That'd be a good question for the race team. I don't name the race car, but we had the C5R, the C6R.
Right, there it is at Laguna under camouflage.
Yep, and we'll be introducing that at Daytona here in January. You'll see it uncamouflaged, and we make a lot out of racing technology transfer. I talked about the tires, the aerodynamics on this car. We're all driven by racing strategies. That's why it looks so different. And so, we took the techniques that were used on the C6R, applied them to the street car. Now that makes a better baseline for the C7R. And pretty soon you'll see what the boys at Pratt & Miller, right down the road from here, developing the car, you'll see how they leverage that to make an even better race car.
So this camouflage car, this is a race car, or is this going to be on the street?
That was at Monterey during the historic weekend. They just took it out, ran it for a couple laps, and put it back away.
It was a tease.
I've never seen a race car camouflaged, ever.
Yeah, no, it's been done before, but
really?
It looks particularly cool in the C7R.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Point R.
Point R. That's right.
I'm lobbying to drop the point.
Okay.
I'll
take that back.
What is the point of the point? That's all I meant.
Pointless.
Yes.
Okay, Right Knight wants to know, were the rumors of a turbo V6 in the Vette true, and would it be called the Blue Flame?
We did, like we studied the mid-engine, we also studied V6 twin turbo because we wanted to make sure, the bottom line, whether you're getting rid of pop-up headlights or going away from round tail lights, the bottom line on the car is what makes the best car. We have a lot of Corvette legacy, a lot of heritage. We respect that, we honor that, but we're not tied to it such that we'll never change. So, obviously a V8's been a part of the Corvette since 1955, and we went to a lot of customer events, and I'd always ask them, how many of you want to keep the V8 in the C7? Everybody raised their hand. How many of you would accept a V6? Like one or two brave souls would raise their hand, and usually everybody else would boo them down, So we knew what the customer pull was, but we live in a world where there's regulatory reality. We're part of General Motors. There's fleet fuel economy realities. We have to do our part not to drag down the corporate cafe. Otherwise, it won't be a Corvette. If we aren't respectful of trying to get as much fuel economy out of the car as we can, we actually get better fuel economy, even in the past generations, better than what our customers demanded. We did better than that. And this one's a whole nother step farther. So we did look at a V6 twin turbo, and it can be a great engine for certain cars. It really didn't fit with us.
Packaging nightmare, though.
It's a packaging challenge, and then our history has been we bring out the coupe convertible, and then we have up-level cars traditionally. So if you think about that, okay, now I got a twin turbo V6 on the base. What do I do for the up level? Is it just a higher boosted version, or are you going to bring the V8 in? And once you bring the V8 in, then you have to architect the car for a V8 anyway. And so it gets into kind of a descending spiral where the car isn't really what a Corvette is. Well, so we did look at it, to make sure we weren't making a mistake, make sure we're making the technically correct solution. But a V8 that deactivates 4 of the cylinders is like a turbo off boost, right? There's pluses and minuses to it. You get good fuel economy when you're not asking much out of it, great performance when you do, and with our system with cylinder deactivation, you get that immediate throttle response that Corvette customers are used to, that great low-end torque. The car feels really light and responsive, and turbo motors, for all their attributes, that's not one of their strong points.
And you have 29 highway, right? Or
29 highway, yeah.
So
17
with
city,
a V8,
highway.
so I just can't
and
imagine
some media have tested well into the 30s. I saw one article was over 40. Steady state, just put it in 7th gear, running 4 cylinders, and just keep your foot out of it, and you can push 40 miles a gallon.
That's unreal.
More sophisticated, better V8, and
right.
Problem solved.
Yep, everybody gets what they want.
Okay, we got more phone calls. Ben, let's bring in the next one.
Yes, my name is Clem Zarofsky from Delmont, Pennsylvania. I've owned 11 new Corvettes starting in 1959 when my wife and I left on our honeymoon in one. And I'm waiting to buy a C7. Just got rid of my C6. But my question is, are you ever going to make the plastic vents on the car available in the body color? I don't particularly care for the shiny black part on like a yellow car or even a torch red car. It seems like there's too much of a contrast. Thank you very much. Bye.
Well, thanks for the question. The design of the car obviously is a high contrast, eye-catching design. Many people find it extremely compelling, but I've heard a small number of people would like less contrast. So obviously we're not going to disclose any future product information here, but that's obviously an opportunity for us to do more tone-on-tone designs.
And I got to imagine, how hard would it be to pop that out and paint it yourself?
Some customers have done that already.
Yeah.
You know, it's a painted part. One thing we decided to do on this car was we didn't want mold and color black plastic. That screams of cheap, and we had done that before. So unlike that, we paint all the black parts in carbon flash. So if you look at it, it's not shiny black plastic. It's a very premium finish, but it is high contrast.
Mm-hmm. It is. I like it, but I can see where not everybody would want it that way.
Get a black car, and there's no contrast at all.
That's exactly right. Okay, Jonathan Brown wants to know, what's faster on the road course, the Z51 A6 or the Z51 M7?
They're very close to the same. The weights of the cars are almost identical. The gearing of the 6-speed and the paddle shifters is so fast now that they're very close. On the track, on a road course, I'd give the edge to the 7-speed manual. In a straight line, our fastest times have actually been with the automatic.
Very interesting. Ben, we got more phone calls. Let's bring in the next one.
Hi, my name is Noah from Palo Alto, California, and I have a question about the C7 for Mr. Juechter. I like the new design, would definitely buy it over any car with 8 drive shafts. But my question is about the engine. I understand there's benefits to push rods, and I'm wondering if we'll ever be able to see hydraulic pins engaging secondary tappets, so we could have another cam profile in there on a push rod engine. Let me know. Thanks.
Okay, this is a very detailed powertrain question. We do have variable valve timing, but we don't have alternative lobes on the cam. That's an extremely challenging technical solution. It may be theoretically possible. I have not seen it in the lab anywhere or been offered it by a supplier. So maybe have to wait and see.
Let's see here. Bill Hutton says, please discuss how the NPP performance exhaust works with the drive mode. He says there's a lot of discussion about this. The C7 exhaust does not seem to be as robust as the NPP on the C6. Starts out great when cold, but softens as the engine warms, even in track mode.
Well, there's a lot to that question, but the basic difference between C6 and C7 is we went from vacuum actuated valves to electronic actuated valves. So we can control the valve opening timing extremely precisely with the computers on the car. So on the standard Stingray, we have 2 valves. Previously we had no valves on the standard car. We use those valves to help attenuate noise you don't like when you go back and forth between V8 and V4. Nobody wants their Corvette to sound like a 4-cylinder car. They all want it to sound like a V8. So under light throttle, when you're in V4 mode, we use those valves, and they're not what people would think of as true shutoff valves. What they do is close to an orifice, so it's actually a noise attenuator when it's closed. So that dampens out the sound you don't like, just leaving the V8 rumble in the background. When you get NPP, which is the heart of the question, you get 4 valves. So now you have 4 control mechanisms to modulate the sound. Those we use in concert with the ride mode selector, the driver selector mode. So you can go from tour, sport to track and actually amp up the sound, the aggressiveness of those valves and how loud the exhaust sounds inside the cabin. The tour mode is a nice sporty sound, but it lets you talk on the phone or listen to the radio, but it's there in the background. When you hit sport, it becomes pretty vibrant, pretty alive, very audible. That's what you're gonna be listening to. And then the track mode, we tuned with a helmet on. So you can hear the engine and exactly what it's doing while you're wearing a helmet. So we expect when you're in track mode, you're serious, you're really on the track somewhere. And so there's very different experiences depending on where you set that knob. Even at idle, you can tell the difference.
And Ben, let's bring in the next phoner.
Hello, John Croy from Burlington, North Carolina. Just calling to, thanks for the show. Great show. I'm glad to have Mr. Juechter on. If he could explain in detail a little bit about the ELSD, if the diff fluid is actually being used to apply the clutch packs, and how that system works. Does it work is it disengaged for decel and engaged for accel? And another question will be, how will track days affect the warranty and service intervals? And please tell me that someday we'll be able to download our track days off of a USB onto a USB drive, so we can watch our track days on a computer at home or at the track, or possibly synced to video. Thank you again, John. Take care. Y'all have a good day. Bye.
Okay.
Yeah,
how long is this show? Okay, he's asking about ELSD. He started by asking how the basic thing actuates. We have a standard differential that's filled with diff lube, and then the ELSD part of it is another hydraulic actuator that actually has its own separate circulating hydraulic fluid. The fluids don't mix. So it's almost like two different mechanisms tied together. The hydraulic mechanism varies the pressure on the clutches that can make the diff go basically from an open diff to almost a fully locked diff. There's no simple way to describe how that thing operates. It's continuously variable, and it's doing something all the time. Even when you're driving straight, it's dithering. It's looking at steering sensitivities and what you're requesting in the car. It's looking at the way the vehicle is reacting to the road, and constantly either trying to stabilize it or even unstabilize it at times. Like when you're asking for steer input, it doesn't want to stabilize you to a straight line. It wants to help you rotate into the turn. And so it backs off the clamp load to let the front end rotate. And that's one of the reasons why this car feels light. Even though we have a big V8 up front, you dial in the steering, you got very direct steering, and the front end just swings around. It feels a lot like a mid-engine car, actually, and part of that is because we have the electronic differential. He has a question about warranty. I'm not quite sure what that warranty question is, but unlike most manufacturers, you can take your Corvette to the track, assuming you have the Z51 package and you don't void your warranty. Many manufacturers, if they know you've been to the track, the car, whatever problems you have are yours. So as long as people don't modify the car and run it stock, we stand behind it. Then his last question was about telemetry and downloading track kind of information for their home computer or in video. We've heard that request before, although it's a fairly small subset of our population. So it's something we're thinking about.
Mm-hmm. You talked about Pratt & Miller earlier. James Welling would like to know, would Corvette return to NHRA drag racing when Ford leaves?
Unlikely, I would say. That's more of a Camaro muscle car kind of traditional thing. Corvette, we're going to focus on road racing and endurance racing specifically because you really do get the simultaneous vehicle development. You really do get the lessons learned. We use more street car parts on our C6R and future our C7R. And we really do use that as a crucible for testing this stuff.
And I got to believe sports car and endurance testing helps sell the car too.
There's always that. Right. I mean, that's what we've, that's the last thing we do it for is pure marketing, even though that's a benefit. But most manufacturers, that's the main reason they do it is marketing, win on Sunday, sell on Monday. For us, it's learn all during the week and at the race and then go apply those lessons to the street
That's great.
car.
That's the way it should be done. Right. Ben, we got a few more calls. Let's bring in the next one.
Hi, this is Jeff W. from Albany, New York. About a year ago, Peter wrote a piece about how he thought Corvette should be split off as its own brand within General Motors. And I was wondering if your guest could comment about any debate that might have been sparked in General Motors, when he wrote this piece, and also what his opinion on that is. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, what Peter had been talking about, this was a big discussion. Should Corvette be broken off as its own standalone brand?
Maybe there's some of us on the team who'd be cocky enough to think that that would be a good idea. But I think we really have huge advantages being part of Chevrolet through distribution. And we really are. We are our own brand inside the Chevy brand. I like the way we're positioned. We can take advantage of General Motors' vast resources we get to leverage a lot of things that people don't see. It's very expensive to develop cars, and as a standalone brand, you'd kind of push away from that a little bit, even though it might give us more autonomy. And there's a lot of people who would say, man, give me that autonomy. I want to be free to do absolutely anything we want, untethered by anything the rest of the corporation would have us do. But the flip side of that is you're probably going to lose a lot of the technical capability, a lot of the advantages that you have, say, by sourcing engine components with truck volumes, things like that, where since we are somewhat forced to share some of the commonness throughout the car, not just powertrain, we try to change the things that customers care about, but places where they really don't, and we can get what we want. Being able to take advantage of the economy of scale of General Motors is a huge advantage, and the main reason, really, why we can sell this car for $50,000.
Absolutely true. Yeah. No, it's good for GM, and what's good for GM is good for Corvette.
And vice versa.
To coin a phrase. And we got one more phone call here. Let's bring that one in.
Hi, this is Dan Hudgens from Dalton, Georgia. I was calling regarding the recent fires with the Tesla Model S. Peter had mentioned on a recent show that something about the battery being wrapped only once, whereas the Chevy Volt was wrapped 3 times. And I was just trying to find out what he meant by that, if this was some sort of insulation or whatever. And maybe just some comments in general about what Tesla may be dealing with. It doesn't seem like any of the other EVs have this problem. Thanks.
We discussed that in the earlier part of the show. Exactly right. Yeah. So, this is probably as good a place as any to wrap it up. But Tadge, this is great.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
And you can tell by all the questions from the viewers, they know their Corvette. And they want to know even more.
Hardcore.
Yeah. And that's what happens when we go out. We spend our summer weekends out at customer events, and so we get these people who just know a ton about the car, and they're just constantly picking our brains for what can be done.
So just before everybody goes, remember we're going to have this drawing for all this Corvette swag. All you have to do is make sure that you're a subscriber to Autoline, and if you are, no worries, you're already in there. And again, don't forget, we're going to be going live from the LA Auto Show Wednesday, November 20th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. Want to thank Hyundai as being our signature sponsor for that event. But Tadge, thanks for coming on Autoline After Hours. Great having you here, and great having the car in the studio.
Great to be here. It's fun to talk to you guys.
Yeah. Gary, great having you here, too.
Gary, thank you.
Love your input.
John,
Peter.
Another show.
Want to thank everybody for having tuned in.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone. Your journey, our passion.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern. Get your daily news fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.